put on a sound,
So
sound button.
this one?
No. On the keyboard,
Here?
the sound button. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So we're live. And we're live with Darren, who comes from Emphasis, who's Director of Business Development Unit at Canberra, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so would you like to tell us a little bit more what you actually do?
Sure. I like building things. In fact, if my dad hadn't been so insistent that I be an engineer, I probably would have been an engineer. For the first 20 years of my career, I spent that building computer systems, gradually building bigger and bigger computer systems. I then swapped that passion for building things from building computer systems to building business. And I moved into a sales role. And for the last 12 years, I've been in sales. For the last 8 years, I've had a lead role in building Emphasis government business here in Canberra. I actually started our office out of my spare bedroom here in Canberra, and it's kind of been ironic over the last 6 months under COVID, spending a lot of time working back out of my spare bedroom.
Exactly where you started.
That's right.
All right, so I was wondering, because we met at the Hackathon events previously. So could you discuss a little bit what is the role of innovation in your sector, and how important is creativity?
Absolutely. Look, without creativity, there would be no IT. I mean, you think about how technology works. For it to start and for it to progress, it's required people to think differently. I look at myself. I originally wanted to be a librarian. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And I spent 2 weeks as a librarian for work experience and realised that I didn't want to be a librarian. Because the thing about technology is it actually encourages you to do things differently and think about things differently and to explore. If people kept doing the same things the same way, we'd still be back where we were more than 60 years ago when technology first started. So creativity, drive, the willingness to explore is what keeps taking technology forward.
So I was thinking maybe to touch upon a little bit of both of our interests in photography.
Sure.
Because we also have some people in the room that also have some insight in the industry. And so how did tech change the way people do photography from your perspective?
Well,
or how it changed things for you, comparing with how it started and how you're doing it now?
I've actually got in my home a collection of photographs from an ancestor of mine who used to have a photography studio in Melbourne in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And back then, because it took such a long time to expose the photograph, they actually had stands that would sit behind people's necks to hold their heads still so they didn't move while the photo was taken. So think about how much things have changed in that 100 or more years. Yes, I got my start taking photographs in the days of film and photography, and I look at how much technology has changed that space. Certainly my kids wouldn't know the first thing about film. They've never exposed a roll of film in their lives, haven't got the faintest idea what it means. So the fact that we carry around in our hand our Android phone or our iPhone, that's got the ability to take, almost without exception, great photographs. And that's really only arisen in the last decade. Again, it points to the impact of technology on our day-to-day lives.
So when it comes to such impact of technology, and also knowing that you're keen to join hackathon-related stuff these days, what is the driving factor for you when it comes to such events?
There's a couple of things. I've been involved in hackathons like GovHack. Also another competition called Young ICT Explorers, which is for kids from primary all the way through to year 12. Part of the reason I get involved in those events is it's an opportunity for me to give back, for me to mentor, to act as a judge, to actually contribute back into the IT industry that's given me so much. But I also get a real kick out of seeing people do things with technology and explore the boundaries of technology and do things with technology that I would never have thought about. And some of the best ideas come from some of the youngest minds, particularly the kids in the primary age, that they just think about things differently. They think without the boundaries that have been instilled on us as adults, and it's actually a lot of fun. I've been involved now for the last 3 years in GovHack and also the ICT Explorers as well. One of the things I like is I also take new learnings and new ideas away from those hackathons myself that I can apply either back into my day-to-day life or maybe even back into my work life.
So when it comes to females in the industry, I remember we had some discussions previously about finding female leads in the tech industry.
Yep.
Could you reflect a little bit from your perspective throughout the years? Maybe you've seen some changes, and especially these days when a lot of industries are trying to get more females in, especially tech industries, and the barriers that you might see, or maybe you could identify what are the challenges these days, why those females are not there yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And look, what's interesting is that if you look across all of the major IT companies, whether it's the one I work for, Infosys, or some of the other large multinationals, some of the large well-known brands, they all have an active push for diversity. And it's not just about diversity around sexuality, it's about diversity of thinking, diversity of ability. One of the other things that I'm part of is a mentoring program for students with some form of disability. And one of the things I had to learn through that is disabilities aren't all physical and they're not all obvious. So it's part, the drive to get more females in the workforce is joined with a drive to get more diversity in the workforce. If I think about it from a pure IT perspective, one of the challenges has been that if I think back to the start of my career in the late 80s, IT was largely seen as an engineering discipline, a domain for men. Now, if I leap forward 32 years on to 2020, that has changed, and there's definitely a push and an encouragement for more women to study IT, but we need more. Partly because if we don't have women on IT, then 50% of our population has missed out on an opportunity. We're not exploring the best of the brains in our workforce. If I talk about the challenges, well, I'm actually trying to actively promote diversity in our business in Canberra and identify more diversity. Again, not just from a sexuality point of view, but from or an intersex point of view or a sex point of view, but from the ways that people think, the ways that they approach ideas. And right now, it is a real challenge for us to find women to come into IT roles, partly because there just aren't many to start with, partly because what I've found in actively seeking to recruit women into these roles is they often are unwilling to take the risk into something new sometimes because they don't think they're good enough, sometimes because they are less likely to take risks than I see men being willing to. And again, look, this is my lived experience rather than other views that people might have. And the other thing I'd have to say is strong women in IT are in high demand and they're really hard to get. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's a challenge to find women in the sorts of roles that I'm looking to recruit for right now, especially. It's definitely changing, but we're starting from quite a low base, so that makes things hard.
So you mentioned that you focus a lot on diversity these days while recruitment takes place. So I was wondering, could you identify why? What are the reasons behind that you look for this diversity in teams? What is in it for you, so to say?
I don't know if you've ever heard the term that a rabbit is a tiger designed by a committee. So if everybody thinks the same and acts the same, you get the same outcome. And if you're looking to take things forward, to make leaps and bounds, to challenge the ways of doing things, you need diversity of thought and diversity of approach. Again, my company's got a specific approach to work with people who might be on the autism spectrum, particularly around testing of computer systems, because people on the autism spectrum tend to be very, very good at testing systems and making sure they actually work. So that's just one example of the sort of diversity of thinking that we're looking for. And again, like I said, if we don't have a strong enough cohort of women, we're missing out significantly. Also, if I look at it from my customer's perspective, if I look at my customers in government, they've got a very, very strong representation of women in leadership. So our organisation actually needs to more closely mirror our customers as well. So again, there are a whole range of reasons why we need a greater number of women in IT and in leadership in IT.
So what would you advise females that are choosing their career path these days and maybe consider IT as a field to be in? What kind of tips you would give for a person that has not much background in the subject or maybe doesn't have much support to enter that subject?
One of the things I was actually thinking about this question. One of the things I encourage people to do, and it's not just about a career in IT, but it's about finding your purpose. People talk a lot about finding your passion. Passion is quite a temporal thing. It rises up really quickly, it explodes, and it comes down again. I think if you're looking for something more sustainable, more long-term, something that will evolve over time, find your purpose. It took me a long time through my career to understand that what I really like is to build things. And so what I would encourage people at the start of their career to do is gather as much experience as you can in whatever it is that you like doing to start with. Make a start, and if it doesn't work out for you, move on to something else. The more experience that you can gather, the better. The more experience you can get out of your key areas of expertise, the better. The other thing I'd say is, if I look at my own experience, where I've learned the most is through the things that have been the most difficult for me, the things that have pushed me into areas where I'm not comfortable, that have required really hard work, that have challenged me a lot. I also encourage people to, wherever they get the opportunity, try and spend some time working overseas. I mean, for me, my first ever overseas experience was to work in Kuwait. For someone who grew up in a country town of 32,000 in the west of Victoria, to then go and spend time working in Kuwait, well, that really broadened my horizons. Drove my love of travel, but it also caused me to learn a lot as well. So challenge yourself, and particularly at the start of your career. If I look back, my only regrets are the things that I didn't do and the risks that I didn't take. At the start of your career, you've got plenty of room and you've got plenty of time to make mistakes. Yeah, take some risks, challenge yourself. Yeah, there's some of the things that I'd say to someone starting.
So I was wondering, do we have any questions from the audience? Yes. Yeah.
I was just formulating one, but it's very inarticulate at this point.
Okay, in the meantime, I could ask maybe Darren, you could tell us what you can help us with when it comes to preparing solution, like business development, pitching.
Sure. So, like I said, I spent the first 20 years of my career doing IT projects and project management. All sorts of weird and wonderful things, from building a race meeting management system for the Harness Racing Board of Victoria. So I know everything you ever wanted to know about horse racing. To a electronic records management system for the Public Record Office of Victoria. So one of the first ever electronic archiving systems. This is for a bunch of archivists who could only think of paper and documents, and were given by a government department a 20-year-old computer system to put in their archives because all of their records were electronic and the archivists didn't know what to do with it. So I can talk to people about projects, how to think about projects, how to deliver projects. I can also talk to people about pitching, how to think about how to get their message and their ideas across, how to think about who my audience is and what the message is that I really want to get across to them. When I stand up and pitch and present to my customers, I saw a long time ago about this thing called CYA. That doesn't stand for cover your ass, it stands for cover your audience. So actually, when you're presenting to one person, or 5 or 50 or 500, give some thought to why they're actually coming to hear you, or see you, or see a presentation, or see a piece of art, whatever form that may take, whether it's a painting or a photograph or a ceramic item. What do you think your audience might be interested in, and how do you need to deliver that message to your audience? And how long do you have? Do you have 30 seconds? Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have an hour? What are the key things that you want them to feel, think, hear? They're the sort of things that I've learned, particularly in the last dozen years that I've been involved in sales, that I can help people with from the pitch perspective.
So I think we have some questions now, yes?
Yeah, so I have a question. From the point of view as a person working in technology, what it might be a good approach from technology perspective to art?
From a technology perspective to art.
Yeah.
I think my question's pretty similar.
You want to say it at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's helped me. Thank you. So I'm in the music industry, which, like photography, has been radically disrupted by technology, and it's now the barriers to entry are lower. However, as a woman in the music industry, there's different barriers now to overcome this space.
Yeah.
From your technology background and your experience with photography, how do you see technology supporting transformation for women in the creative sector, as well as women who want to explore information IT as well? Like, how do you see the two groups? Do they relate to each other in your brain? Are they separate?
What I'm seeing is slowly but surely, gender is mattering less and less. That it used to be you're a woman and here are the sort of roles that you would normally be expected to fall into, and you're a man and these are the sort of roles that you would normally be expected to fall into. And even if I look at my career, those expectations have changed such that gender matters less and less and less and less. So
Do you think it's because we get more tools or more access to tools such as technology that would allow?
I think it's just, particularly in the West, and look, I can't speak for some other countries, but my view from a Western point of view is society's changing. That the expectation is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your gender is, you can quite literally do anything. I can't specifically talk to the music industry because whilst I've got a sister who's a music teacher and I've got two sons who are in the local school band, I can't talk enough about the music industry from a real position of experience to give you any specific advice about.
Well, if he's here until when 8?
Look, I'll be here until 8 p.m. And I'm available to talk all weekend. And look, I mean, quite literally, my company office is quite literally across the road from AMU, so quite happy to continue the conversation outside. Sure.
All right, then. With that being said, thank you, Darren, for joining us as a mentor. Applauses from Darren.
Thanks.
Thank you.